All right, welcome to IA 101, Introduction to Automation. Today we're going to be talking about a topic which isn't heavily covered in our current book, which is maintenance management software. Now, they mention maintenance management in chapter 13 a little bit. They talk about it in the reference to asset management. Asset being a financial term for generally something applied to a big piece of machinery, which most big pieces of machinery do require maintenance. In fact, almost everything out there, whether it's a building or a machine, whatever the asset is, it's going to probably require maintenance. So the term asset management is a generic term applied to maintenance management. However, the number of softwares out there to support maintenance management has increased, and it's increased in their abilities. They have radically increased in their abilities, and one reason for that is because of the advent of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Because if I have the ability to collect data on my machines and then see, based on the data that I collect, how that machine performs in over the months or years that I own that machine, then I can use that information to help me make future decisions better. And that information gathering and then applying it to future decisions is typical for machine learning, if not true AI. So let's talk about the kind of softwares that we're getting into here, and they are growing. And there are dozens out there that we're not going to learn about all of them, but I'm going to use a couple of them as good examples of the kind of stuff that a typical maintenance management software will do. So let's dive into this. So we're going to talk basically about some of the challenges in manufacturing facility. And I'm going to pause there and listen to what you guys have to say about challenges in your facility for those of you who are currently working in that environment. Then we're going to dive a little into a typical CMMS. We're going to talk about what the CMMS means and what it stands for, and a TPM. And we're going to talk about what that means and what the content is. And you're going to see there's a big overlap nowadays. No longer do we have such a clear definition of different kinds of systems. They all kind of do the same set of things. And we're going to go through one example software. So what are the challenges? Why are we bothering with this software? Well, here are the reasons. Equipment maintenance scheduling can be a real hassle. I mean, if you have 4 pieces of equipment, you can probably stick it on your calendar, just stick it on a paper calendar and pencil, good to go. If you're really high tech, you might use your Google Calendar. But if you've got a plant full of equipment and there's different levels of maintenance, and then you have to integrate that with your production schedule, then sticking it on the calendar is not going to work out so well. And you throw in the fact that you might have 20 or 30 different maintenance personnel scattered across a few different plant locations. This gets trickier. So the ability to integrate all of that it's very much of a challenge. And it's been done a variety of ways over the years since we first had factories, since the turn of the century. But keeping track of that, personnel schedules, all your spare parts. How do you know when to order spare parts? How do you know where your spare parts are if you need to get them quickly? This is a big challenge, and it's more of a challenge you might think. Spare parts management, these parts in these big cages, can be bewildering, the number of total parts. And it's so easy for that third shift maintenance personnel to sneak a part out of the cage and use it somewhere and then not write it down. So you've got a big deal there with tracking parts. We also have mobile equipment, and we have tools, specialized tools. We also have repair on demand versus plant maintenance, because we always have to make the decision between a maintenance schedule and waiting for something to break and repairing quickly. And there might be a combination of those going on at any one time in the plant. And then, of course, integrating the production schedule. So that all gets very complicated. Plus, these softwares help you make decisions. As we said, decisions, not just keeping track of stuff, but making decisions around stuff. And for instance, you have to make a decision about what equipment you're going to replace and when, or upgrade, or obsolete. You're going to have to decide how many people you need to hire, or maybe you let them retire and you don't replace them. And you have to, every year, a budgeting process. And that budgeting process decides what money you're going to spend in the next year and how you're going to apply it. And that budgeting is a very tricky and important business process for every company. So these are the challenges that we all run into. In addition to these challenges, we have a few other ones like training. How do I know what personnel are trained in order to apply them to the different kind of work that's out there in the field? Now, in some plants, this is not such a big deal. Every person is pretty kind of sort of cross-trained. But in, say, a pharmaceutical plant or a highly regulated environment like a food plant, you might have very specific certification and training required before they're allowed to work on certain equipment. So training is a big deal that can be applied to the maintenance as well. So let me pause my record here, and then I want to hear from some of you. I know some of you are currently working in plants and can give us some good feedback on your challenges. Now, let's not dive into how your software works yet. I'll ask for that later. Let's just hear about some of your challenges at your facility. All right, I've paused. Oops, wait a second. I haven't paused record. Okay, thank you very much for your guys' input. So we're going to start talking about two different common acronyms for a maintenance management software package. And one of them is CMMS, which stands for Computerized Maintenance Management System. And you don't have to scribble down notes on this. This is recorded. You can go back to it. Plus, I'm going to save this presentation up into D2L for you all. So I gave you a link in here to a company called emaintenance.com, and they actually sell software. Surprise, surprise. And so what they say in a computerized maintenance management system, the main features are the following list, and there's several pages. Number one, work order management. Work orders are a traditional way of describing the order that's handed to the tech that need to do something on that machine. It tells them what to do, when to do it, what parts they might need, how long it should take. Sometimes it doesn't say how long it should take. And it gives them any information for retesting, recertification of the equipment that they're working on. That work order then is a complete package. The work order management system schedules the orders, figures out what personnel they need, figures out what parts need to be used when that work order is started, gets those parts ordered ahead of time, so that becomes a whole other inventory system associated with the parts associated with work orders. The next thing on the list is asset management. Assets is basically the way of describing a machine, a car, a house. These are all assets. But from an asset management standpoint for this software, they generally talk about a machine, some sort of big piece of equipment that they wanted to see the history of, status, tracking work orders on it, and that sort of thing. PM, preventative maintenance. Obviously, that needs to be built into the schedule. You should be able to put a whole plan in there for any asset to decide when you're going to do PMs. Next, for our parts and inventory management, I mentioned that. You guys all mentioned that in your war stories. And that's the hardest part about any inventory, or rather any maintenance management system, is inventory management, because a lot of personnel like to play fast and loose with parts. And they don't necessarily run the software properly to tell the system whether the part's there or not. Reporting and analytics in this area, you got to have management be able to run reports on this to see what equipment they're going to keep and not keep, see, where there's efficiencies that can be developed. And there's tons and tons of reports that comes out of the software. Mobile CMS app, it means that you can have your maintenance schedule on your tablet computer or your phone, so that you don't even have to have anything printed off. All your scheduled data, maybe even a little video on how to do the repair instructions, part descriptions, things like that, could all be baked into your mobile CMS app. And there's some new stuff coming down the pike, which I'm not even mentioning later in this presentation, which is the idea of augmented reality, AR. The idea that you could take your tablet computer with this camera on it, aim it at the machine that you need to fix, say, fix me, and then on your tablet will be a picture of the machine, real time, with the video of the machine that you're aiming there. Overlaid over that video will be little arrows telling you exactly what you need to do on that machine. Here's the access hatch, open that, pull this card, review that, check this, check that. All that given to you real time on an overlay in augmented reality. So that's something that can happen in these apps as well. Next area is regulatory compliance. That means you've dotted the I's and crossed the T's for the regulatory agencies. Like FDA might require a very specific kind of clean out cycle and test to make sure the unit is clean if you're dealing with food or pharmaceutical, and so on and so forth. And the last area that might show up in CMS is integration with the rest of your business. For instance, integration with SAP. The SAP PM module has built-in integration. It's, well, not as nice as you might want, but a lot of software out there is designed to integrate with SAP to automatically update inventories, schedules, personnel, and that sort of thing. And tap into other systems like SCADA and PLC. For instance, you could have PLC hooked to a machine, and then the machine could say, whoa, I'm getting a high temperature on this motor. The PLC knows it, and the PLC could then send notification to your plant maintenance system saying, whoa, dude, you have a high temperature on this motor. You best get to maintaining that soon, and have an automatic work order cut. PM is predictive maintenance. That's another term. This is that AI stuff. That's machine learning. Predictive maintenance says, based on sensors that might have come from a PLC, I'm going to monitor my equipment. And if I see certain key factors reaching a threshold, maybe more than one, maybe it's 3 or 4 factors altogether reaching a threshold, or a combination of things, it says, whoa, I'm going to predict that based on the current data, this is going to fail here, which means you need to fix it just a day before. So you can predict when it's going to fail and then plan a scheduled maintenance the day before. That's called predictive maintenance. And that's where the AI stuff comes in. And then last but not least, any good CMS software, CMMS software, is going to have multi-site capability. The idea that you can integrate many different plants into one, that way you can have shared parts inventory. You wouldn't necessarily have to keep all the parts at all the plants if they're close enough together to transport easily. Shared resources between plants, and global strategies for buying equipment and all sorts of things you can bake into good multi-site capability in CMMS. The next acronym is TPM, Total Productive Maintenance. And there is software out there that's called TPM software. It does things remarkably like the CMMS software, but they're called TPM because that's an older term. That's the traditional term. It's total productive maintenance, came out of a Japanese style improvements from 1950 to 1970, according to Wikipedia, developed by Shiichi Nakajima. I have no idea. I don't know much about that person. All I know is that is what I've seen in the books and Wikipedia, who has been the expert at this stuff. And he came up with these core functional areas in TPM as a concept. And sorry, these 8 functional areas in TPM. And these 8 functional areas are areas that he thought was critical to focus on in a plant maintenance model. And he said you need Kaizen activity, or Kobetsu Kaizen, or focused improvement activities, which is also very much linked to lean manufacturing. We're going to get into lean manufacturing shortly. He also came up with Jusuhosen, which is autonomous maintenance. As much as possible, making your maintenance as automatic as possible. When something is about to fail, fix it before it fails. And then he's got planned maintenance. And then everyone knows what planned maintenance is. And then you've got quality maintenance. And then you've got development management, education and training, and office total productive maintenance, as well as safety, health, environmental, which we all traditionally know right now and forced to comply with from an OSHA standpoint. But these were his areas of total productive maintenance. And notice that he emphasizes education and training, as well as development management, so that as you develop new techniques and software, you've got that built into it as well. A typical software package that calls itself TPM, this one is called Omnex Systems, and they came up with the software. And let me blow this up slightly bigger. That has these, 7 different areas of functionality. They say you've got maintenance planning, practice, plant maintenance, breakdown management, scheduling, and predictive maintenance. So it's not really 7. I think it's only 6 unique things. So those are their key areas that they focus on. Notice they also add predictive maintenance. This is a relatively new thing. And a lot of the different maintenance officers are now adding that as a common feature in what they provide. Another common software is the Proteus software package from Eagle, and they feature a broader range of functions. A lot of crossover with enterprise software. Now, in the Proteus, they talk about budgeting, so you can do planning for when you're going to buy your next piece of equipment and how much budget you need next year for your parts and for your personnel for maintenance. They talk about equipment, demand maintenance, inventory, transaction, tasks, employee, PM, of course, work orders, of course, scheduling. Now they've added in vendors and purchasing for all your parts, as well as receiving and, of course, reports. And here, the areas that they focus on are pretty broad as well. They talk about asset management as a whole, so you can look at all your major assets and do sort of decision making on infrastructure, deciding to do analysis and deciding what big piece of equipment is getting your full production value out of it versus its maintenance costs. And then it helps you decide if you're going to keep that equipment or not. And sometimes they use this sort of level of analysis to decide whether to keep a whole plant or not. And so for the whole plant may be at risk if enough of pieces of equipment in that plant become obsolete and cost more to maintain than they are of value to the company. So that's always a risk in a plant, is if it ages out, they're going to look at the analysis and decide it's no longer making enough money. So you see some of the same features we talked about earlier here: mobile asset tracking, key performance indicators. It's just a way of saying measuring the performance of maintenance of equipment, of production associated with these pieces of equipment, this asset, this plant. Can go across multiple buildings. They've got warranty management in this software too. So that way they know when a piece of equipment is going to be running to the end of its warranty, and you can make decisions differently or not depending on the warranty period. Certification as well, service requests, and inspections can be built into the software as well. So the Proteus has a slightly different approach. It looks like it's more enterprise approach, more business approach than the hands-on stuff we saw with the other software, in this case, PM Pro. So that's kind of it. That's all I wanted to go through, was to give you a range of how the different, I'll call them maintenance softwares work. Make sure you understood there's 2 different acronyms that are commonly used and where they came from and what they mean. So you should definitely remember that TPM stands for Total Productive Maintenance, It's Japanese in origin and includes these functions, and that CMMS is US based and stands for Computerized Maintenance Management System, is a generic term for a lot of different software out there, and includes a broad range of functions focused on keeping machines running and not costing too much.